All right, good morning everyone. My name is Anna Marie and I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. Welcome back. If this is your first time joining us for a virtual event, welcome. I hope you have a good time today and thank you for joining in. If this is not your first time, I'm always going to say it, welcome back. Like I said, I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, and today we are standing once again in the beautiful North Coyote Valley Conservation Area just south of downtown San Jose. This area is really amazing. It's about a little less than 1,000 acres that were just protected last November by us, the Open Space Authority, in collaboration with the City of San Jose, Peninsula Open Space Trust, and some other really important partners. Technically it's a seasonal wetland. We're in the middle of June, end of June, so right now it's very dry, but if you come back in the winter, it's usually filled with water. And the area itself is a really amazing area for wildlife. It's essential for wildlife movement, for water, as I mentioned, for working lands, which is just another word for agriculture, and then also for people like you and me to come out and enjoy nature. Today we're going to enjoy nature and art with another lesson from artist and naturalist Edward Rooks. So today we're going to be drawing and painting western fence lizards, and I'm sure Edward's going to talk a little bit more about it. As always, you are our eyes and ears. It's a little blustery already. We do have our mic set up, but let us know if there's any issues with sound or visuals and we'll get that fixed. But right now I'm going to hand it over to Edward. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Anna Marie. So today we're going to be looking at the western fence lizard. It's an iguanid type, so that's the order that it belongs to, a suborder, the iguanids. And it's the most common lizard in California. So a lot of people, most Californians, if not all, are familiar with them. They're in my garden, and they're probably in many people's gardens if they don't spray for insects and end up poisoning the lizards. But they're very common and very interesting. So they make a good subject as far as their structure. The scales are very pointy. They've got these sharp scales. They belong to a group of lizards called spiny lizards. And their scales have these ridges and points on each of them. So they're quite pokey. When you look at them, they look rough and scaly. So the scales not only pokey, but they overlap each other, so they even stick out more than normal. Some lizards don't have that, they look more smooth. Alright, so with that, this is the reference that I have. It's a male. These lizards are typically brown, but they change color, and they change color because of heat and light. So they actually have a little third eye on top of their head that keeps a lookout for how much sun they're being exposed to, and they can actually change color. Their skin changes color according to the amount of sun. Now, some people thought that maybe that's because if you're out in the sun, you want to collect more heat to warm yourself up more, you're going to make yourself darker. But apparently it's the reverse is true. They lighten up out in the sun, so more reflective. So typically they're brown, but sometimes they can be like this one here that I'm using as my reference, black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it today with watercolors and start by drawing it with a pencil. So here's my little watercolor pad, a block. I've got some sheets of watercolor paper, which is quite thick, much thicker than normal paper. And it's glued down on all the edges so that it stays flat, so it doesn't buckle when I put water on it. And that way it's a nice block of paper that doesn't blow around in the wind either, so that helps. So what I want to do is figure out how to compose this, and I've composed a picture here as reference on a diagonal. I think this is a very interesting picture because what it shows is that these fence lizards are also called bluebellies. So they belong to the scaly lizards, they're the spiny lizards. They're bluebellies, and then the genus is Celophorus. Celophorus means pore on the leg pore, and that's because they have little glands on their leg scales. The spiny leg scales are porous, and they actually lay down scent marks. Some of them, not all of them. But anyhow, that's just an interesting tidbit. The angle of this image here is the head is up towards the right side of the picture, but inside, so the head's going to be up in this area here somewhere. Okay, and I'm going to have the tail down in this corner, so I'm going to just put a line up through my image there. That's where my lizard's going to be. That's about how big my lizard's going to be. And now I have to put the body in. So I'm just starting right away with the drawing. The ground that it's on is a log, and you can see them on rocks and logs and houses. They're everywhere here. They climb trees even, but some people think they're more ground based because they run around on the ground a lot, and they're pretty fast. So that's another name for the group. They were used to be called the swifts, but they're not particularly fast. They're fast, but not as fast as some of the fastest lizards. And then the body's going to be here, coming to about the middle of the page. Okay, so that's my middle. My body's overlapping that a bit. It's a chunky, roundish body, and that is typical of these. One of the typical features of these spiny lizards. Spiny lizards are common throughout the United States, from Canada going down to Panama in Central America. They're very common throughout America. Okay.
Edward, when you get a sec, do you think you could clip the mic onto your shirt?
Sorry.
Everyone gets this. Thank you.
Hi. Well, I hope you guys got all of that.
Oh yeah, no one had said anything yet. Just being proactive.
So, chunky body, a nice big head, all right, but the head is up and over the back, so it's a little further over. Here's the back here like that. The head is actually up a little bit more like this, okay? And I don't want here's my mouth. I don't want my mouth to be too far, so there's my throat, okay? And then here is this, where the arm comes out of the body, the shoulder. So you're going to have the shoulder right here, okay? The hips are going to be down here, and out of the hips you're going to have a leg, thigh coming out above the midline. You can see I'm going to use this line where the tail meets the tree as the midline, going through the body along that dark line there, and through the jaw, through the mouth, okay? Well, the mouth is above the midline, so maybe right, midline's going to be over here. Anyway, so the tail's going to come all the way down. Tails on these scleropterous spiny lizards tend to be longer than the body, thick at the base where they meet the body. Here's the thigh hair coming out. The knee is going to be here, and then the calf is coming out a bit like that, down the tail, and then you're going to have the foot here like that. Toes coming out this way and that. A foot is about as big as a head. That's quite typical of most animals. Birds, people. If you measure my foot, which is a foot long, my head's a foot long. Anyway, I digress.
And Jessica is wondering what's the name of the lizard. It's a type of spiny lizard called the western fence lizard, also known as a blue belly. Thanks for asking.
Can you hear Anna Marie well? I can move the mic around if you need that.
I think it should be close enough.
Good. It's a western fence lizard, the most common lizard in California. There we go. Okay, so there are the toes, and at the end of each toe you're going to have a nail, but first you're going to have these sort of little swellings of the pads, and I'm just going to sort of demarcate the pads and the knuckles. Here are the knuckles, and on this longest toe you're going to have two knuckles inside and one at the tip of the finger, the pad finger, the toe. And there's the pad on that one. Put a knuckle here, so that when you do this, you've completed the toe. It's a thin toe with knuckles, okay? You just sort of go between the knuckles with a little double line like that, and then at the tip there you can put your claw. They have a nice developed claw, very long toes, and that's, because they're swifts. They're pretty fast. And they're climbers more than runners, but they do run and they chase each other around. They're very territorial. So what we see as folks with lizards in their gardens is a lot of these guys in our garden doing push-ups, showing off their blue bellies, and you can see the blue belly quite clearly. So I have to be careful when I'm painting this to make sure that I have a nice blue belly that shows up. This is a blackened male. Males turn really dark, and that's more of a hormonal change when they're defending their territories. hormones kick in and they become very dark and very aggressive. And anyhow, I'm going to make that browner when I'm painting it. So I want that belly to stick out. The fattest part of the belly is probably here, not on the shoulder, but the shoulder is pretty fat. So I want to make sure I get that going up a little bit there, coming down to the tail. I don't want to make it too big though. That head looks too big. So proportionally, I should be able to fit 2 heads in a body. And my head is a little bit big, so I'm going to just bring it down just a tad. And then there's the mouth. There's my head coming in. So it goes up from the body, neck, up over that ear. That's the ear on the side of the head there. And then back down towards the eye. The eye is going to be about there like that. And then there's the mouth. And then here is the throat coming into the shoulder like that. The eye is in that eye socket. Another eye socket back there. Okay. And then the mouth is going to go from underneath and behind the eye here like that to over here at the tip. Either side of the mouth you're going to have scales. These are labial scales or lip scales. And right above the lips you're going to have nostril. Okay. And then you'll have a lot of scaling in here. The scaling is very much cross-hatching. It's easier to map out the scaling that way. It's going to come wrapping around the body like this, around from the edge, so as if it goes around the edge like that, around and around and around, and then wrapping around the body in the opposite direction like that. That's going to help you get scales. It won't be completely accurate, so you can adjust it according to your reference. On the lip scales, you're going to have about 10 lip scales like this. And on the front here, you'll have a rostrum, a bigger scale. And on the bottom here, like the same. And underneath the neck, you're going to have the throat has a pattern that wraps around this way. Around the throat. Scales going around the throat like that. And then they come down the throat, and let me get my glasses on so I can see the reference properly. So that it's hard to see that direction there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from memory. They come this way like that. And you can see it brings out that scaling effect. Okay? Now when I paint this, it's going to be blue lines against a blue throat so that it becomes an overall blue feature. And on the back here, it'll be brown, dark brown lines on a lighter brown back. So I'm going to change up the coloring on my scale lines. Okay, the ear is going to be behind the eye and behind the lip and above the shoulder. So my shoulder is here. My arm is going to begin right above the line here like this. So there's my shoulder for my right arm, the right leg of the front leg of the lizard. And here's the end of my lip underneath the eye. So back here, about an eye's distance away, is where the tympanum, the ear. They don't have a pinna like we do around the ear, but they do have scales, big scales, like that, like teeth around their pinna. It's quite attractive. I have no idea why. It's almost as if they can close that up. And it's a bit pink in there, so I'm going to add some color in there. The eye has some yellowish coloring, and here is actually the eye of the lizard. There's an eyebrow that's very noticeable. It's almost like a hawk. They have this eyebrow that creates shadow over their eye. They love to be out in the sun, so it's probably necessary for them to see more clearly. So there we go. That's a fence lizard head. Okay. Now, on the body here, well, let me get this leg in. So here we have the tail. The tree is coming up under the belly here. The hand, the front leg is going to be ending here. The elbow is going to be here in the middle. So we're going to have the forearm here, the upper arm, sorry, the forearm here, hand here, the legs coming out 1, 2 fingers. I'm saying fingers, 4 legs, okay? And then there, and then that's going to have, actually I'm going to make that one longest. The claw at the end, and claw at the end, claw at the end here, coming this way now, changing direction. So there'll be a knuckle in there, second knuckle. So there's pretty much that leg. I'm going to make that shorter, that was too long. Okay, so there's one leg. The other one's coming out from the shoulder. So the shoulder's up here. The tree, top of the tree is here, like that. And the hand, the four toes, going to be here. The elbow is going to be here. So I'm just sort of figuring out where my most important points are. Then I'm lining them up and joining the dots. There's that leg there. And then I can actually add toes that are not seen in the reference by putting points on there. Claws, claws, and that looks good. There we go. Okay. And now let's get this thing scaled up and then start painting. All right, so scaling on the body is going to come around, wrapping from the back here like this. All right, I'm just going to put some guidelines in, and then it's going to come wrapping around the opposite way like this. And then I'll fill in the gaps. So I should be able to fit, I want to probably fit about 5 scales or 4 scales in between each of these. So then if it's 4, I can go like this and then like that. And that'll work. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I can add another one there. And then the opposite way, wrap that properly. Have to be more careful. I could probably fit 3 in between these. Keep about the right size. Make sure that this outer edge of this lizard here, there's the hip, looks like a spiny lizard. It's got a jagged edge. There we go. Okay, so there's a fence lizard's back, the belly, the scales in the photograph are wrapping around the belly this way, which means they probably then come up into these like that. And then the opposite scale, the opposite lines are going to go this way, wrapping around the belly. Okay, and I'm going to paint those blue. There's a dividing line in the middle of the belly here. These are, even the rounded lizards, they are flattened. They're chunky bodies, but they flatten out on the ground a little bit. Okay, I think this back needs to come up a little bit more. That's just looking too... There we go. All right, now. So the scales here are going to go wrapping around this way. Wrapping around the neck. And then coming back this way. I would be more careful laying these down at home, but we have a timing constraint, so I'm going a little faster than I probably should. Wrapping around the arm. There we go. Scales on the toes, scales on the hand, foreleg, and then same thing here, making sure I can see the edge of that more clearly. Okay, scales. And scales. And just tidy that up. Scales wrapping around the thigh. Wrapping, and I'm going to change up the direction of the scales because now we're looking down the leg. We see that from the top it'll go like a U rather than upside down. And then going against that would be this direction. And going against that would be that direction. And the toes. Scales wrapping around each toe, about to halfway down the toe. It's hard to see on rough paper any detail, but if you have smooth paper that you're drawing with, the toe, I'll show you the toes.
Perfect.
Okay, I actually have something better. There's a female, okay, when they're brown. That's a typical animal you'll see from above. You won't see that blue belly at all. There are the spiny scales, okay? So that's how I would draw them if I had time to spend on every scale. And that's what they do. They do these push-ups so you can see that blue underneath. So these are my photographs from around my house. And that's when I was practicing drawing scales. That's a neat picture I got of one with his mouth open. All right, so lots of scaling, what the scales are called. On the underside of the lizard, I was mentioning the porous scales. These are the porous scales here along the back end that they mark the rocks with. Okay, they're the blue belly patches. And on a really excited male, or an older male actually, when his hormones are high, he would have a lot of blue on the throat, a lot of blue on the belly. Okay, that's a typical female again. And there's a close-up of the head, and you can see right there between the eyes, that is that little third eye, or the pineal eye. Okay, which will keep track of circadian rhythms and all of that. What was I going to show? Okay. Males doing push-ups with the blue throat. And the females will also do push-ups. So males are very territorial. They keep other males away, chase them off. But yesterday or the day before, I noticed this in my yard and photographed it. It's a female doing push-ups, but not so much with her front legs, but with her back legs more than her front legs, raising her rear end and raising her tail high in the air and facing her rear end towards the male, and the male chased her away. Well, they didn't chase her, she didn't chase her away, he chased her and then caught up with her. They didn't mate or anything, but I expect that will happen when they do mate as well. And you can see how dark he is, very black, and she was sort of brown. I don't know if you can see that photograph very well. Okay. All right, so I can't remember what. Oh, it's the scales. Did I pass that leg scale? I had a nice legs. Anyhow, that doesn't matter. I just want to show you this. Yeah. Okay, so you can see the legs, and then you can see how long that first well, so that would be the little toe, right? That would be the big toe. That's kind of very different from our foot.
Leslie says lizard yoga poses.
Right, definitely. Okay. Well, I can't find the lizard leg scale, so I'll just put this back and get on with the painting. That's why we're here.
I like learning. I think, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it is cool to see the different photos and learn a little bit more about the anatomy, right? It's all art and science and nature combined. I think it's great.
I think that's a huge part for me, certainly, and that's why I do nature painting. Painting and drawing teaches us, and it's a great opportunity for us to slow down and think about these things that we're painting, and to go do research on them. When we're trying to figure out how does that toe go, how do those scales go, you know, you go to Google, or now, but in the old days I used to go to the library or to the museums. I'd go to collections and then look at the skins. Okay, so we got started painting just going to put some scales on this tail. Wrapping around, making that cross hatching. So there we go. It's a good composition. It matches this to a degree. Okay. Now I'm going to wet my paints, get my brushes out. You can get your pencils out or whatever you're using, and I'm going to paint the background first. Oh, there's a little plant hopper.
Yeah, one was on the camera already. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they get around, those guys. And so I want to try to mix it up. I chose a nice light green background so that it really stands out, and then a reddish tree trunk so that you have this combination of blue and red and yellow and the full spectrum. I love a spectrum. I love color. Okay, start with a big brush. Start with the lightest colors, and this one here has a lot of yellow in the background, so I'm just going to go straight to the yellows. And I want to have the viewer first attracted to the lizard, and so I'm going to make the lizard the center of attraction, the highest contrast, not just in terms of value, but also in terms of color. So I'm going to bring my yellow, which is going to compete with the blue and the greens and the reds, but mostly with the blues, close to the lizard. So there's where my lizard's going to be, like that, right? And then we'll bring some greens up to it.
Nancy D-Bird says, greetings from Mexico. Wow.
Wow.
Thanks for tuning in. All the way from Mexico.
And just to get it, more leafy looking, sun dapple through the leaves. And then I'm going to have the tree be sort of reddish. So I'm going to make it a reddish brown. So I'll put some raw sienna, which is sort of a yellowy, orangey brown really, and add a little light cadmium to it to get a little redder. And I'll use that because I can see it pink in the shadows, and I really like that. I want to have that rock be pretty pink. And I'm going to make some of the deepest of the light colors right there near the animal. That'll be the highest contrast again. The tendency for the texture of this rock is to be lines like this. And it's just a rough rock, so we're just starting off by laying down some color. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to be particularly red in the shadows right next to the blue lizard, because that orangey color is going to be the opposite of blue. And if you have any oranges or reds or yellows next to the blue, it's going to really add to the beauty and contrast of the drawing. And the tendency again is going this way, over the top, and then down the side like that. Okay? There we go. And just add some pinks on top of that. Something like that, and then I'll add more detail later. So that'll get it started. Alright, now for the lizard, the light colors for the lizard are going to be a kind of a cerulean blue or a chromium blue, which is going to be the light back of the lizard here. It's a very sort of a sea blue, almost aqua blue on the back, legs, forearm, tail. But on the belly, we know it's going to become, and I'm just sort of rubbing that blue over the pencil to make it a gray. And then in the belly, we're going to make that cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is that color where it's the perfect blue, really. It's that deep blue. Like lapis. So we'll have some cobalt blue, a very beautiful blue there, deep blue on the belly and on the throat. But that's just the throat, not down the chest. Okay, and there's a bit of blue scaling on the tail. And on the inner thigh, remember it's yellow down behind from those scent glands, but it's sort of blue speckling in the tail. The males have that blue speckling more than the females, but they're all very colorful. When you look at them close up, it's like iridescent coloring. Very pretty. Now, what I want to do is, like I said, I wanted to make this more of a brown color, more like a female. Some males, well, not some males, most males have brown on them, so I'm going to just quickly rinse off this, or wipe off this palette and start using more browns. And so I'll use a sienna to sort of lay down the lightest color of the brown first, and it's over the blue, so it's going to make a fairly gray lizard, which is what they look like. Okay, so a little brown in the blue, it makes it prettier, and then you can sort of play up the scaling. The pattern is linear, so you're going to have linear brown patches like that down the side and down the. That's the sort of patterning you're going to find on those lizards. So I'm just going to enhance that a little bit before, and then there's a black patch here that I can hint at.
Alan's wondering, are you going to draw a southern alligator lizard?
Oh, not today.
But those are really cool.
Yeah, they're out now.
Yep, I've been seeing them a lot actually, along with fence lizards just in my neighborhood, and I live in a pretty urban part of San Jose, which is cool about lizards. You don't have to go too far to see them. A lot of them are just right in your neighborhood, even if you live in the city.
For those who don't know, alligator lizards are long, look like alligators, and they're more arboreal apparently than these spiny lizards, the fence lizards. But I see these fence lizards all the way up in the oak trees, so even though I read that, I know it's not necessarily true because they'll get way up in the oak trees. But alligators will go up into the trees and climb around using their tail to hang down, and they go and get eggs from birds' nests and stuff.
Yeah, they can get to be pretty large guys. And quite the powerful jaw. You don't want to get too close to the alligator lizards. I've heard people have had some pretty bad finger injuries from those ones. But like any wildlife, you want to give it some good space.
Yeah, really. I love alligator lizards, and what I love to see, you typically see them in the grasses, in the trails, along the trails as you're walking, and they swim through the grass. They have very short legs, long bodies, and they use their legs, they put the legs against the side of their bodies and they swim through the vegetation. It's amazing, like a snake. Alright, so that little bit of red there is really helping to sort of make that rock look pretty. But I'm just going to start to add some more detail and brown coloring as I'm here with this brown paint to sort of vary it up. Now I want to have parts of this rock be darker, or log or whatever it is, and so I'm trying to make some areas darker in larger swaths, not just details of texture. Okay, and then leave that lit area there like that so that you have some light even after you've added all your details. Alright, and I'll get into that later. Now I'm going to switch my brush to do the scaling, and I'm switching to my liner brush, which is a very narrow, very thin tipped, long, and it's long because you want it to be able to hold a lot of water. A lot of brushes are very just short and thin, but this is a thin and long one. It holds a lot of paint and water, and that allows you to add details for a long time. Keep drawing the line and make long, similar weight lines. So I can then draw with this very easily. This is my scale line that I'm trying to repeat. I can now draw with this liner brush like a pencil. Okay, see that? And I'm using blue paint to do that. Now I'm going to use indigo blue, which is a darker blue, the blue jeans color, or Prussian blue, to draw over my cobalt blue on the belly. I just want to make sure that my lines don't change the color of the belly from blue to black. So I want to keep a blue belly. I'm going to use blue lines. Now these will be browner up here. I don't want the blue to go too far up. That'll be gray in the end, but this is going to be all blue here, so I need to draw the lines there for sure. And those lines wrap this way. And then curve around with the belly. That way. And you can see it hides the pencil lines if you do it right. And you still have room to go darker even, and to put in little shadow details. So this is not the darkest dark yet. We're just doing the outlines of the scales. The darkest part of the throat in the reference is right in the middle right here. There's a dark patch. So I can put that in with the indigo. And then I'll put these outlines going up along the throat like that. There's the chin, the lip, scales. Those should not be, I didn't do that quite right. And then there's the lip itself, and that's the rostrum right there. Chin, nostril. I'm outlining with the blue because on this it's black, and the blue will bring the brown darker. I will go back in with brown now, so I'm just going to stop there. But the blue is a good underlying color for the brown when you want it to get close to black. Brown plus blue makes black, especially a dark brown. Alright, so this is a very heavy line right here. That's that line that demarcates the eyebrow. Okay? And I'll come back in here with, actually I wanted to lay down, I forgot to lay down my yellows. I need to middle brush, so this is more of a sharp round, pointed round, and I wanted to add the feet are yellowy brown. They're not the same color as the legs. So I'm just going to add a little yellow to the toes, and that I'm going to add that yellow underneath the thigh there, where they have the scent glands, to suggest that. And add some yellow to these toes here to help me remember that it's there, and then when I'm painting my outline over that, that'll show through. Okay, yellow is just the light ground color. Okay, and there's sort of a yellow patch around the eye. It's a yellow brown, but I'm just going to put that in there now, and then I'll add a bit of orangey brown to that. And that varies the eye a bit, makes it prettier. Okay, there's also that pink in the ear at the tympanum, so I don't want to forget to put that in there. There we go. That's going to add some color. So we're just looking for places to put in our base ground colors, and now we're going to add the scaling details on the back with, well, first let me just add a little brown to that leg. I want to have the legs be a little browner. That'll make it different from the belly. Okay, that white can go brown, and now I'll add some brown outline, and I'm going to use a darker brown now. So I'm going towards the outline of the scales. Is going to be darker, so I want to have maybe an umber. I can use a raw umber or a burnt umber, but you want probably stick with the umber. And for these scaly lizards, these spiny lizards, it's more of a oak color, so it's more of that raw umber, but it's not dark enough. The burnt umber is a little darker, so I might switch to that. Let me see how that looks compared to that. Yeah, you can see that shows up better. It's also prettier. And I'm going to go over my blue lines there, and that just adds a variety of tones. There we go. That's a fence lizard for you. Okay. And now once I start doing those scale lines in that burnt umber, it should start to really look more like a fence lizard. See that liner brush, how beautifully it works, and how many lines I can do without it running out of paint, or before it runs out of paint. Wrap it around, wrapping around like that, okay? Wrapping around, wrapping. And that's going to give you the sense of 3 dimensions. Wrapping around the back, over the shoulder, over the head there, so it all looks the same, doing it all at once. All the details on the lips, the eyelids, come back in here, add it to the blue. That's going to make it look more like a fence lizard. And I'm not too worried about my markings on the face there being a little bit off on the lips, because I have to come in here and add some pattern. The skin pattern is the last thing that I add on top of all this texture. Here's the scale. It's added on top because it's very hard to work around the pattern of streaks and dots, and easier to add them after. There's the ear, those neat teeth-like scales on the ear, and then that's the head done, like that. And you can see now that you have the brown head with the blue throat. The blue shows up better. Okay, that's why I didn't want to have it like this black, otherwise it'll just be too blue a lizard. Now these scales go this way in reverse, wrapping around the body. think I'm going to add an extra row of scales in there. Didn't have quite enough. Wrapping around, I'm starting to straighten out too much. Wrapping around. And even though I'm not drawing exactly on top of my pencil lines, it's not too bad. It doesn't look too bad at all. And in the end, when I add final dark shadows with blacks or dark colors, that'll all hide. That'll all be hidden. You won't even see that. And so I'm going to bring this right up to the blue belly and stop. And then there's going to be a dark line right there, a black line right between the brown back and the blue belly. Okay? Alright, so that won't show up. Now the leg is wrapping around the leg. Wrap. Sorry about all of this detail.
Yeah.
There's a lot of detail in scales, and I'm a stickler for detail.
I actually kind of enjoy that part of painting, the really detailed stuff. It's a little bit meditative, I guess.
I was going to say that.
Maybe not if you're teaching it on camera, but
I don't mind doing it. I just, I can imagine it might be difficult to follow. It gets boring and monotonous. But I don't mind doing it at all. Like you said, it's part of that stopping and thinking and meditative. All right, so I'm going to do the foot now that I'm here. Here's my claw, and there's the outline of that toe. And then I can come back and put these scales on so that I just don't have a problem with losing that toe against the details of the tail. I want to make sure I'm drawing them together. There we go. Outline of that longest toe on the leg, hind leg, outline here. And I'll again come in with a very dark color afterwards, but right now I'm just using that brown outline to remember where everything is, put it all in first sort of light darks. And I can put that claw going that way. Now here I have this to finish. And there's a scaly texture at the edge. And the light underneath there is lost, so I'll have to finish with a dark shadow right here to help let that tail stand out against that leg. Okay, so wrapping. That wasn't quite the right direction. All right, so these are the light darks, and it's really important to get these down, and then you can add your darks on top of it to add your pattern and final details. There's my shoulder. Wrap. No questions from
not right now.
everybody's drawing, I expect.
I would think so. We're following along with bated breath like me.
It's a lot of detail.
I will say, as much as the cross-hatching takes time, it's less time than drawing every single individual scale.
That's right. It's actually a speedier technique. Yeah, and it also helps you to figure out where the pattern of the shadows, and when I do the final black shadows, where do I put them when it comes to individual scales to suggest where the individual scales are. it helps you find those. All right, so last thing is the feet. I have to get those toes in. What's that bird?
Yeah, but if anyone does have questions, please remember you can ask them in the comments and I can field them onto Edward. So don't hold back.
Yeah. If there's anybody left watching.
We got 43. It's going between 43 and 60, which is awesome.
Okay. And then there we go, a knuckle and claw, knuckles, 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 claws, and something like that. Last but not least, here's the shoulder coming in, so we want to make sure we have that throat coming into here and then the shoulder bulging out, and then you have that texture on the edge, suggesting that spiny lizard scaling texture down into the hand. Nice fat muscular foreleg there. So there's the outline. That helps just place things. Then you come back in here and go over some of those lines that I had already painted in blue. I can leave some blue because they do have speckling, a blue speckling. Something like that. And now that area here is just too blue still. I gray that down. And so what I might do is I can see a bit of purple in this area here, and I think I might use some purple to sort of gray down some of that brown. But I can now overlay. All right, so when I say overlay, I can say, all right, my rock is a little bit too painterly or messy. I can make it more unified in certain areas by taking colors that I like in there and washing it. So let's say I wanted to add a little blue or something to add shadows. I can pick up some blue with the brush, a gray blue, and say I'm going to add a shadow down here like that. To vary the coloring a little bit and to add a sense of light and shade. So that's a kind of a gray color. Which I can see in the rock. But it's now tying it into the lizard as well, so it isn't all in the sun, it isn't all warm. Alright, so here this gray color can be washed over top of the blue or even over the brown to make more of a sense of a line, and to get rid of some of that sense of the cross-hatching being too similar. So you just want to wash over it. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of black. I don't usually use black. I try not to. So I'll mix it with a little bit of blue or something. Gray it down. And then I'm going to start to add it to areas where there are shadows. It's not the darkest black yet. It's just a grayed down version, okay? And that's going to darken up that area here between the thigh and the body. I can sort of separate the thigh from the tail. I can come in here and add a little shadow right along the body there to sort of push that back. Add that dark patch underneath the ear, there like that. And that sort of makes the neck fold back in. Okay. Add a dark patch to the ear itself. A streak behind the eye like that. Okay. A streak behind the mouth like that. And a streak that goes down the back and all the way down the back like that. Make it rougher. Trying to use the scaling texture. And these patches of these streaks and patches along the back here are crescent shaped in many cases. So you can try to pick up that sort of crescent shape of the streaks and marks, patterns. Okay, there we go. There's a streak going down. It's messy looking, but that's how it looks on the lizard, right? And then maybe make the tip of the tail really dark, so it falls back down into that crevice. Add a shadow under the body again. Brings that leg forward. We're now starting to add our darks, our darker darks. We're still not in the darkest darks yet, so there's a shadow under the legs and under the body, falling down the rock. Bits of holes in the rock or wood or whatever it is. And there. So we're starting to get lift, dimension, 3 dimensions in the drawing. Okay, and then we can also put holes, recesses where we want. But we're working from light to dark, okay? The other thing I can do now is I can wash. So let's say I wanted to, we don't have much time left, so I'm just going to do a wash, see if I can get that background to look a little more unified maybe. By my paints are messy. Just want to clean that off a little bit. Wipe that off. Unify that background with a little yellow again maybe. And that way it falls back some more. Lemon yellow, which has a bit of ochre in it for some reason. Okay. Got a bit contaminated, but that's all right. And I'm just going to do a wash, so I'm make up a bunch of that yellow, and that'll soften up the background. You don't want the background to be full of high contrast. You want it to sort of fall back. So I'm going to soften up the lines by washing it with yellow and unify it a little more than it was at the same time. All right, well, we don't have much time. 2 more minutes now.
We can go a little over.
Okay.
As always.
All right, I'm going to add a little blue to the rock. I want this forward edge here to be a little more interesting. Oh, it got a little yellow in it. Contamination's becoming an issue. Okay, so I'm going to add some more variety to this rock here in the foreground. And that's nice. Got a nuthatch above us. Anyway, we're out of time.
It's pretty good to me.
It's looking all right?
It's great.
I'm never happy with it, but there it is. You know, I do my best in an hour, and then I hope you enjoyed it anyway, folks.
I did. I think everyone else did. I hope everyone else did. Let us know if you enjoyed it. But that's all,
Western
folks.
fence lizard.
Right, Western fence lizard. That's it. So I just wanted to say, thank you again. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Anna Marie, and I'm here with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. Just to wrap it up, wanted everyone to know that this full video will be on our Facebook page and our YouTube later, so you can watch it again anytime you want. I know it's a lot to cover in an hour, so you can go back, watch some of it over, pause it, rewind, all that good stuff. And on that note, just wanted to let everyone know, I think this is like our 8th or 9th or 10th art one. And so just to let you know, all of these art events we've done, butterflies, birds, mammals, wildflowers, trees, landscape, lots of different mediums. Edward's been with us for the past couple months doing these. So all of those are on our Facebook and our YouTube. So if this is your first one, or maybe your second or third, and you missed some of those earlier ones, feel free to go back and choose what you want. They're all, like I said, on our Facebook page. You can just go to videos and then virtual events, or you can just scroll through all of our videos and find the one that you want. On that note, thanks again for tuning in. Leave a comment, if you liked it, or you have anything to say, and also, this is, it's the end of June right now, but we do have more events in July. So you can always go to openspaceauthority.org/events, see what we have coming up for virtual events next month. And with that, happy summer. Hope you're hanging in there and getting your nature fix every day, whether it's close to home or maybe on a hike or something like that. But stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Just realized some of the stuff standing back here.